We have a man who is guilty of stealing money from the bank. He's a bad guy. Can't you tell by the way? I'm not sure if bad guys wear their hats like that or like that. Let's go with this one, okay? But that little thing, it just keeps sticking out. We're going to go. Are you okay being a bad guy?
Yes, I can put it away.
No, you're good. You're good right there. All right. So this man, he's guilty of stealing money from the bank. But he stole more money from the bank than he can ever pay back in his entire life. He steals the money. He wastes it. He buys, I don't know, what do you buy? Yachts. Yachts and yachts of stuff, right? He buys all kinds of things. He steals more money than he can ever work to pay back. $1 billion or more. And there's no way he can pay that back. He's guilty of it. He is found guilty. Come a little closer to me right here so I don't have to walk so far. All right. Now, he's hopeless. He will never be free of the debt that he owes. Never. It's never going to happen because he can never work to pay it back. If he gets a good job the rest of his life, he'll still never make enough money to pay back that amount of money that he stole. Don't you feel bad about yourself? Do you feel guilty or anything? All right, you should. All right, you should. All right. He's going to work the rest of his life to pay off that debt, but he's still never going to be able to pay it back. So he becomes a slave to the bank until that debt is paid off. Back in the old days, this is exactly what they would do. If you owed money to somebody, you couldn't pay it off, you become their slave. You work for them until the debt is paid off. In this case, it's never going to happen. The rest of his life, he's going to be a slave to this bank because he stole the money from the bank. The bank takes everything he owns away from him as payment toward the debt. But there's still more debt that he can never pay. The bank takes his house. The bank takes his car. The bank takes everything he owns. So now he sleeps in the alley behind the bank. He scavenges trash cans for food. You feel bad about yourself? Yeah. All right. So he works from sunrise to dark for the bank. He does the jobs nobody else wants to do. He cleans the toilets. Right? He picks up the trash. All the stuff nobody wants to do because he's a slave to the bank. He's got no future, no option. There's nothing he can do to change it. He's never going to be able to work enough to be able to pay this debt. This is his forever. The rest of his life. Then, Severa, go ahead and have a seat there for a minute. Then, an incredibly wealthy man. He looks like a wealthy man, doesn't he? Like he's just on vacation from Hawaii or something. An incredibly wealthy man sees this bad guy's horrible situation. Here's what he does. The incredibly wealthy man donates more than enough money to pay the debt and purchase his freedom. This is that was nice of you. So he just gives it. Now here's what he does. The money to pay for what was stolen is given to the bank, right? So all the money, it's paid back. Everything that he stole is now paid to the bank so that he can be free. That was awesome of you. He saw him living in the alley. He saw him eating out of the dumpster. And he's like, I'm going to do something. He donates all the money. He puts it in an account in the bank. And then he gives above that. And it's deposited into an account with his name on. What's your name going to be? I don't know. He puts it into the account. We're going to call you Mel, all right? He puts it into the account. And I'm going to forget that probably, where Mel has money now in the bank. All of the debt has been paid from what he stole. That was nice of you, Mr. Wealthy Man. But beyond just paying that debt, he puts enough money into a separate account so that he can have money to live on. Anytime he needs it, all he's got to do is go to that account and withdraw the money, and he can use it for all of his needs. That was amazing. The debt is paid. Plus enough extra money is put into the account that this man, Mel, our bad guy, the bank robber, can withdraw as much as he needs to take care of his needs for the rest of his life. All right? Now, our wealthy man, what's your name going to be? Turtle. Our wealthy man, Mr. Turtle. Mr. Turtle, okay? Because you're really rich. All right. Our wealthy man, Mr. Turtle, he's already donated the money. The money's already in the bank. he writes a letter to our guilty man, Mel, explaining to him that he will be free from his debt and his slavery if he'll simply step into the bank president's office and tell him, I accept the donation given to the bank in my name. That's all he's got to do. So the wealthy man takes some money, donates it to the bank, deposits it there, extra money for him to live on the rest of his life. He puts it in the bank, writes this letter. Let's pretend like the bulletin this morning is that letter, okay? He writes the letter and he gives it not to this man, but he gives it, come here, Mr. Severo. He gives it to a bank employee, step up a little bit so everybody can see you, to deliver to the man. All right, so give that to him. All right. Along with the letter, the wealthy man explains the whole situation to the bank employee. What's your name going to be?
Bob.
Bob. Okay, that's a perfect name. He works for the bank. His name's Bob. So we've got Mel, Bob, and Mr. Turtle. All right. Mr. Turtle, or the wealthy man, explains to the bank employee, Bob. All right, he explains to him the whole situation. He explains what happened. He explains that you stole all that money and you're never going to be able to pay it back. And he's a slave to the bank. And he explains to Bob that all he needs to deliver this letter, and all that Mel, the bank robber, needs to do is step into the bank president's office. If he steps into his office and says, I accept the donation, it's all his. It's all done. So he gives the letter to Bob. All right, Bob sees an opportunity to get rich here. Oh, can you say boo, boo? Huh? Bob sees an opportunity to get rich. So here's what he does. He removes the letter out of the envelope that was meant to tell Mel about his freedom, and to tell Mel about the rich man, Mr. Turtle, the one that paid for his debt. Bob goes into his office, go into your office with her, and he types a letter that looks just like the original, but he changes the facts. Boo. All right? He twists the truth of what really happened. All right, Mr. Bob, come back up here. He puts this, step up here so everybody can see you, new letter in an envelope, and then he delivers it to this poor slave. Go give that to him. Now, this poor man doesn't know what was originally in the letter. He doesn't know. He doesn't know that the wealthy man paid the debt. He doesn't know. You bad. Go back, sit on that chair. He doesn't know that the whole debt's been paid. Why? Because the letter got changed. The words are changed. The facts are changed. So here's the way it was twisted. It says this. The new letter says, the wealthy man donated the money to Bob instead of to the bank. That was wrong, Bob. The new letter says that Mr. Turtle donated the money to Bob. All right? With the agreement that, listen to this, the guilty man, Mel, will work for Bob instead of for the bank. And the letter says that Bob really cares about Mel. I care about you so much that I want to help you pay off your debt faster. So, every time Mel, our guilty man, works for Bob, Bob is going to pay off a little bit of the debt. And every time Mel, our guilty man, every time he does something extra for Bob, boo. Every time he does something extra for Bob, Bob is going to pay a little bit extra on that debt. So, the poor, guilty bank robber leaves the alley behind the bank. Jaden, go ahead and sit down there for a second. He leaves the alley behind the bank, come over here, stand over here, and becomes a slave to Bob. Bob, come over here, stand next to your slave. Just stand right there for a minute. All right, listen. So you don't know. You think he's helping you. You think he's your friend, all right? So now listen. So now, okay, just stand still for a second. So now, Mel, He's living in Bob's shed. He's eating trash. And he's working hard because he thinks that if he works for Bob, he's going to pay off that debt. That's what Bob told him. Bob took that letter and changed it and said, look, if you just work for me, I'll pay off your debt for you. Every day, Mel works for Bob, thinking that his debt's getting smaller. Every day, Bob tells Mel that a bit more of his debt has been paid off, but the truth is the entire debt has already been paid. And Bob had nothing to do with it. What's he doing? He's just keeping poor old Mel in bondage, and he's benefiting from his free work. The only way that Bob, stand still, the only way that Bob is going to be successful, there's two things that have to happen in order for Bob to be able to pull off this scam. That's what it is, a scam. Bob is lying to him. He's cheating. You shouldn't be smiling about this. That's wicked. He's cheating him. He's keeping him as a slave. He's keeping him in bondage. The only way this works, Mel, our guilty man, must never discover that the letter he received is a fraud. If he ever discovers that this is a fraud, Bob's gig is up. We'll find out. We'll know that he's been lying. Stand still the whole time. Something else has to happen. Bob has to be able to convince Mel that he is actually in possession of all that money and he has the authority to spend it however he wants to. Now let me ask you a question. You've been listening very good. Does Bob actually have all that money? No. The money's in the bank. In fact, Mr. Richman, come stand over here. Stand right here. Mr. Turtle, Mr. Richman, he gave all the money for this debt to be paid off. It's already in the bank. It's paid already. He should be a free man. He shouldn't be a slave anymore. But Bob said that he's the one that has the money. And now Bob, the bank guy, is lying to our bank robber who should be free. He's lying to him and he's keeping him as a slave. That's really dirty. You know that? Stay here. Stay here for just a minute. All right, now look. What would happen if you were that poor, miserable man right here? You're doomed to a life of working for a debt that's already been paid off. But you think you're working for a debt that you'll never pay off. Listen, you believe you're working for a debt that will eventually be paid off. That's what you think you're working for. But in reality, you are working for a liar that's keeping you as a slave, and he's not even paying the debt that he said he's paying. What if this is you? And what if, Mr. Turtle, come stand over here for a minute. I don't want you associating with Bob over there. What if this wealthy man who paid your debt, Braxton, can you come help me with something for just a minute? Let me have that. What if the wealthy man who paid your debt sent a messenger to find you? Now give him that letter with a copy of the original letter in his hand. A letter that says this: the money to pay for what was stolen has been donated to the bank, and extra money beyond that amount was stolen has been deposited into the account in your name. That's what this letter says. That's what the original letter said, but somehow the wealthy man finds out that Bob has been lying and keeping Mel in captivity as a slave. He finds out about that and he says, I'm going to fix that. And he finds a messenger. And he gives him the letter with the truth. The debt's been paid, plus enough extra money on your account so you can withdraw as much as you need to take care of all your needs for the rest of your life. Here's what happens. Mr. Turtle gives that to our messenger, who's wearing a turtle tie, so that helps. He's an ambassador for Mr. Turtle. That works, all right. Now, here's what he does. He takes the letter, come over here, and he gives it to Mel. Now, here's what happens. Now Mel, for the first time, he sees the debt's been paid. Yeah, thanks. Pick that up. The debt's been paid. I could be a free man. I don't have to do anything else to be free. It's already been done. Now look, he's got a choice. Let me ask you something. Be honest with everybody here. Are you going to keep working for him? No. You thought about that longer than most people would have to. Why? Because he's keeping him in bondage. He's saying, you got to do more. You got to do penance. You got to give money. You got to do work. You got to do these things in order to go to heaven one of these days, in order to be free. But that's not the truth. The truth is, the whole thing's already been paid. Christ died once. And that's all the offering that's needed. That's all the offering that's available. So what does he do? He leaves, and he goes to the office of the bank, and he says, remember what that letter said? Just ignore him. Right? Remember what the letter said? He goes to the office of the bank, and he goes to the banker, and he says, I accept that free gift that you gave me. When he does that, everything is restored to where it's supposed to be.